People who had a horrible gut feeling about a person or situation that turned out to be dead on. What happened? Story 1. So, playing designated driver, I'm at a stoplight. When it turns green, my gut says nope. We are cool right here. So 3 drunks in the back and 1 up front, all explaining that I should have let them drive. What the green light means, how to operate the long vertical pedal, etc. All very helpful. Just as I shrug and shake it off, a black Camaro with its lights off shoots through the red light, loses control, and crashes into a telephone pole. Would have T-boned me 100%. The drunks are all in awe of my psychic power. Then the Camaro starts to shoot flames from under the crushed hood, backed up and drove off. Super surreal. Story 2. This stuff happens more than you'd think. Some people are better at getting warning signals from non-obvious sounds or non-verbal cues. You probably heard the thing and only registered it subconsciously. I had a somewhat similar event involving a motorcycle when I was a pedestrian. I was walking along and just stepped behind a wall for no reason mid-pace. I was a bit confused and was going to step back onto the pavement, but I realized I must have done it for a reason. A second later, a very big and poorly controlled motorcycle shot past me where I would have been walking. Thinking back, I know that several things stopped me from ending up in the hospital. Growing up around motorbikes, I know what a moron who can't control a bike looks and sounds like. I was nearly hit by a motorbike on the pavement as a child, and I know that the subconscious can do weird stuff like that to save you. See, if this was me, I would just doubted my subconscious. If I walked off like in a different pavement, I'd be like, oh god, there's my body being stupid again. I would walk back on and got hit by the motorcycle. I don't know how this guy knows to trust himself, because maybe I'm just a pessimist, but if my knee goes a different direction and it takes me off the pavement, I'm just gonna be like, wow, I'm such an idiot. I can't walk right. Go back on the pavement and boom, just crushed by a motorcycle. Story 3. My best friend's family was visiting. My best friend and her dad had asked to see the new fossils I'd added to my collection. So I went upstairs to get them. Her dad was allergic to my guinea pig, who lived in my room. As I turned the corner, I noticed my younger brother, who I call Sean online, was wearing his pajamas. It was barely 9 p.m. Sean never went to bed that early. I asked him why he changed. Sean told me that he felt really sick, and Dad had told him to go to bed and see if he felt better in the morning. Sean didn't look that sick, but something just felt off. I asked if Mom knew Sean didn't feel good. He said no, he just talked to Dad. That wasn't okay, and not because Mom would have been upset if nobody told her Sean didn't feel good. It felt more serious than that. Mom had to know Sean was sick. I started to flip out and snapped at Sean that he should never trust Dad's medical advice. Dad just tells people to sleep earlier and exercise more. Sean needed to tell Mom now. Sean very clearly thought I was overreacting. Heck, I thought I might be overreacting. But he went downstairs and told Mom he didn't feel good. First thing Mom did, as per usual, was check him for rashes. He had a red streak running from his thumb up to his armpit. Sean had severe blood poisoning. We found out later from the hospital he was 4 hours away from death. If I hadn't had such a strong feeling that Sean had to tell Mom he didn't feel good, he wouldn't be alive today. He'd have died in his sleep that night. Story 4. There was a knock on the shared front door. The house was broken into 3 flats. I was the ground floor. I recognized the guy at the door as the boyfriend of the pretty little Asian woman who lived a couple of floors above us. And he smiled at me and asked if he could come in and wait for her in the hallway. Nice looking white guy, very upper middle class, with a tweed jacket and posh accent. Good manners, winning smile. My stomach did a flip, and I said no and shut the door in his face very abruptly. I had no idea why I reacted as badly as I did, because I knew him to say hi to, and I knew he spent the night in the building a lot. A couple of days later, I see her with her face swollen and purple where he had beaten her to a pulp. Apparently, she had been in the hospital for a few days. She stopped me in the hallway and said if I ever saw the boyfriend again, I was to call the police. I'm guessing I subconsciously picked up on some non-verbal cue from when I saw them together. If I'm reading this right, did this guy really just ask to go in this woman's room? Like, I don't know about you, but it doesn't matter how much a smile someone has. If they want to wait in my room, and I barely know this person, just to wait for their partner, instead of waiting in the hallway, nah, I'm not, you can wait outside. Story 5. My sister had a boyfriend 10 years older than her. I didn't have a problem with the age gap, even though the fact that he had his first child when my sister was 13 kind of weirded me out. Age doesn't matter, as when you're adults, right? They weren't dating long, but she intentionally got pregnant 6 months into the relationship. I was really excited to meet him during a family trip, seeing as he's the father of my niece, but on meeting him, I got a strange vibe from him, and found myself anxious at the idea of being alone with him. He didn't do or say anything strange though, and generally seemed like a nice guy. Still, when it was just me and him, I felt incredibly tense, like he would try to arm me at any moment. I stayed at my sister's place for a few days, then went home in the next province over. He had to be on Facebook, and then I got a message saying he thought I was super cute, and he wanted to get together. He literally tried to cheat on my sister with me. He tried to cheat on my sister who was 6 months pregnant. I didn't reply, I just screen capped the message and sent it to my sister and my mom. Asked my mom to look out for my sister since her boyfriend is a puddle of grease. After some issues, my sister is now a single mother. Story 6. I gave birth in November to a baby girl who had a very rare neurological disorder. She hardly moved at all in utero. But when I told my doctors, they all said that every pregnancy/baby is different, etc. I have a healthy son, so I tried to put my worries to bed. We had a completely normal pregnancy. Totally normal test, no indication of trouble. Then she was born. The second she opened her eyes for the first time, I got a horrible sinking feeling in my gut. There was no there behind her eyes. We were still in the delivery room. There were pictures taken, and in every one I looked very scared. There were immediate problems. She didn't latch, she had no reflexes, etc, etc, etc. I shoved all my worries down. She was born a few weeks early. Everyone kept saying, bottle feed her and she'll perk up when she gets closer to her due date. Every nurse, every doctor, every lactation consultant. We were released from the hospital with a quote-unquote healthy baby. Nope. A week later, we were back in the NICU because she was still lethargic. She wasn't eating. It turns out she was basically brain dead the entire time. I didn't want to know, but I knew. I knew the moment I looked in her eyes. The diagnosis was Ohtahara syndrome, a catastrophic and fatal epilepsy disorder of infancy. I had no family history of seizures. Complete surprise, medically speaking. We took her home from the NICU, and she passed away in our arms at 16 days old. Story 7. My ex, she would constantly tell me things that seemed like they could be true with just enough details to make them believable, but were also just a little bit exaggerated, so it made her seem like her role in the story was more important or more unique. It always felt a little off, but she always had the benefit of plausible deniability on her side. Example, one morning I was waking up from work and she told me there was a huge screaming match at the neighbor's house where the two parents were fighting and making a scene. Her role in it was that she took their kids elsewhere while it was going on to keep them out of harm's way. The police were called and the man was escorted off to jail. Since I hadn't heard any of this going on, she just told me, yeah, you were out like a rock, which was quite possible, but it was all a fabrication just for her to have a story that made her seem interesting and important. Turns out she was a pathological liar, and almost none of those things were true at all. My gut knew, but my brain reasoned the sense out of me. Story 8. When I was about 3 or 4 years old, I was playing in the yard in a bikini. Like the cutesy little kid ones with ruffles, and I remember I was sticking my belly out really far because I thought it was cool that I could see my belly in my bathing suit. An adult male family member was over visiting, and I remember feeling like someone was looking at me, so I turned around and noticed that he was watching me. I remember feeling scared. I sucked my belly in and started looking for my mom. The man said, "Oh, you have such a cute little tummy." And I just remember feeling absolutely panicked in a way I'd never felt before. I never told my mom, but as I was growing up, that family member would invite some of the kids over for sleepovers with his adopted son, but my mother would never allow me to go. She always told him that I needed to be up for some activity early in the morning or that I was up late that night before and needed to sleep. I also never forgot that panicked feeling and never would allow myself to be alone with him. If he walked into a room I was in, I would make an excuse to leave and then go stick like glue next to my mother. As you can probably assume, that man was indicted on a federal charges of possession of CP, distributing of CP, SA, R, statutory R, etc. My mother and I talked about it later, and she said that she never had any concrete reasons to not trust him, but she just felt compelled to listen to her gut in this instance. That was honestly one of the most important lessons she taught me. Sometimes your quote-unquote gut picks up on things that your conscience doesn't, but those instincts are there for a reason. My mom also called my cell phone seconds after I wrecked my car miles away from her because she got this strong auditory hallucination of me yelling, "Mom, she's a witch." Story 9. A few weeks before graduation, visiting my best friend at her school, we were outside some dumpy college bar, and this tall, good-looking, athletic guy starts talking to us. Right off the bat, I hate him. I just have this awful feeling about him immediately. Something about him is slimy, dishonest, trying too hard. My friend, who's seeing someone else at the time, nevertheless, seems charmed. I have a terrible habit of being quick to judge strangers, so she probably didn't think twice about my bad mouthing after he walked off. And anyway, graduation is a few weeks away. Well, I'll never see this guy again. Fast forward a year, my friend moved to my city and we share a house together. It had been our plan since childhood. Things were great. Eventually, her relationship ends, and literally within a week, the guy from the college bar, let's call him Chad, sends her flowers and a cookie cake. Just being a nice guy after a breakup. I think this is creepy and overreaching, and a chock full of ulterior motives. And I tell her as much, but she thinks it's sweet. They eventually begin a date, though he lives 4 hours away. I try to get to know Chad when he comes to visit, but he's aloof, kind of too cool for me, and not really interested in anything other than my friend. He stays over a lot and does weird things like show up with his whole family. Again, from 4 hours away, unannounced. My friend doesn't want to hear my concerns about Chad. She thinks I'm judgmental and trying to control her dating life. Maybe I was, but I couldn't stand this man. Our lease ends, Chad moves to town to live with my friend. She and I don't hang out as much, and never see each other unless Chad is around. When I called and invited her to my birthday dinner, she insisted that Chad come too. And when I told her I didn't want that, it's not like Chad would have even enjoyed an all-girls dinner on my birthday. All lines of communication broke down. It was very clear. She chose him over our friendship, and I gave up trying to be involved. My friend and I didn't speak for over a year. She and Chad lived a few blocks from me, and I never saw either of them. I would drive by their house once in a while to make sure everything seemed okay, but I could never tell. She worked 4 jobs, pulling crazy hours, while Chad worked part-time, if at all. From what I know, he spent most of his time fishing on a boat that my friend tried to convince me that he had bought. Not her. She slowly withdrew from all social circles that weren't directly related to him, deleted most social media. It made me sick, and I worried all the time about her. I knew he was controlling who she saw, what she did, who her friends were, not to mention taking advantage of her finances, and it made me sick to think he was abusing her in other ways. After a few years, she left. He had continually threatened to beat her, and she finally had enough. It was hard, and I still feel a lot of guilt for not having tried harder to make her see what I saw about Chad, or at least to maintain communication. But luckily, over the last year or so, we have been able to rekindle our friendship, which started when we were kids, and I've been able to be there for her when she needs me. I'm just so happy it didn't last for longer, as they were continually talking of getting married. Story 10. Ages ago, I was maybe 9 years old. We were on our way home from the local pool when a massive summer storm started. I'm talking full-on garbage bins flying through the air and literally feeling how the wind was moving our car a bit to the left. So we entered the tunnel and I suddenly screamed, "Stop!" at the top of my lungs. My mother slows down and asks me, confused about what's going on. I now crying, beg her to stop the car and wait the storm out. She tells me that she just can't stop the car in the middle of the street in the tunnel and promises me to drive slow and carefully. Just as we're able to see the end of the tunnel, a small tree falls onto the street, followed by a gigantic 300-kilogram rock. That stone would have hit and squished us. It even left a bump in the road. I have absolutely no idea what gave me the feeling, but I am very glad that it was there. Story 11. I was at a party once at an apartment complex that's known for its sketchy tenants. I only knew a few people there, so I just stuck with one of my friends. Halfway through the party, a girl, I call her Sally, I met a few months back at a job, showed up with 2 guys who just seemed really shady, pushing drugs, feeding this girl tons of whiskey even though she was underage. No one really knew who invited them. By 11 p.m., Sally was, let's just say, in pretty effed up. My friend and I leave to go get beer and come back an hour later. Sally's on the floor in the back room, convulsing and foaming at the mouth. Her friends she showed up with refused to allow me to take her to the bath and make her throw up. Chaos ensues. I leave. While walking back to my friend's apartment, I call 911 because I knew something was seriously wrong with her. The EMTs show up and take her to the hospital. 2 days later, she messages me on Facebook to tell me the doctors found multiple drugs in her system that she didn't choose to take. She suspects her friends, but isn't sure. I'm positive it was them. 6 months later, a news article is posted. One of the sketchy guys was arrested for running a child trafficking business from a nearby hotel. So basically, the second I saw these dudes show up with my acquaintance Sally, I knew something was fishy. And I was right, those guys were crappy people. Story 12. When I was 14 or 15, I was living with my mom most of the time, seeing my dad every other weekend and some evenings. I was going to my dad's for a long weekend, Thursday to Monday, and I had this intense feeling that I should take my cat with me. I thought about asking my dad if I could, but figured he would say no, so I didn't. I told my mom as I left, don't let her outside. If she wants out, she will use my bedroom window. 4 days later, I come home and ask where my cat is. My mom looks baffled and says, I don't know. I haven't seen her since I let her outside after you left. She was hit by a car that night. Okay, this story just makes me so angry. It's like this person literally went their way to tell their mother, hey, don't let the cat out. And the mom did not listen. Why? Why did she not listen to this guy? Story 13. It was the weekend, Sunday, before I had the appointment, following Friday, to say goodbye to my dog Winnie. A bunch of us were at a friend's house while he was brewing beer. I'd been there for about an hour, and then I had this really weird feeling that I needed to head home immediately and prepare the area that I was going to bury her. I head home and dig the hole and cover up with a garbage bag so dirt doesn't fall back in. I'm thinking that I'm now prepared for Friday. The next day, my parents come down with their new rescue dog to stay with me for a few days. Their dog ended up biting Wendy in the neck so badly that I had to take her to the ER that afternoon and have her put down. I didn't think it would be fair to her to fix her and then let her go 4 days later. When we go back from the ER, I was able to bury her immediately. As still weirds me out once in a while thinking about it. Story 14. My parents like to help people who honestly don't deserve the opportunity. You can't save people from themselves. They hired this farmhand who I knew was shady as crap for the first time I ever laid eyes on him. He had just gotten out of jail and was a meth addict. They gave this guy free range over their farm truck, their tools, and all of their farm equipment. My stepdad was dying of cancer at the time, and the farmhand promised he would maintain the farm after my dad was gone. Tools and equipment had been disappearing for a few months before my dad's death, but afterwards, it was at a rapid pace. The day we called him out, my husband went through a few boxes my dad had in his inventory before his death. A lot was missing: silver coins, pocket watch, and other valuables. When the farmhand returned to the farm, he proudly exclaimed that the chainsaw had mysteriously vanished from the bed of the farm truck while he was at the gas station. When we confronted him about the missing items, he admitted that he took them to protect them. His mother called us to tell us he didn't pawn the items. They were underneath her house. Good riddance. He was a POS. It takes a special kind of evil to steal from the dead. Story 15. I'll try to make this as quick as possible. Back when I was casually dating my significant other, as friends with benefits, this girl in his friend group gave me seriously bad vibes despite her being really friendly to me on the surface. Over time though, I had an instinctive feeling that she was attracted to him, but it didn't bother me since he's an attractive guy, so it happens all the time. Until she weaseled her way into moving into the empty room in his house when someone moved out. She spent a year and a half doing tiny, passive, aggressive things, like nagging me, telling me she admired how little effort I put into looking good, inviting me over for smoothies, only to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot you were allergic to pineapple," and put pineapple in it. Or making the group go out to do things I'd been asking to do for a while I was in work. Like I love the carnival, asked everyone to go for a solid week. She was the one saying no every time. But when I was working, I see an effing selfie by her with my significant other and 3 other friends at the effing carnival. All of that was pretty mild. Until my significant other finally told me something that happened while we were still only casually dating. He told me that one night she came to his house after drinking, claiming to be locked out of her house. Long story short, she asked to sleep in his bed and started kissing him almost immediately. They fooled around, but he told her he had no condoms, so he could get out of sleeping with her. But she begged him to do the deed without one anyway. And another time when we were still casually dating, he made the silly mistake of confiding in her about feeling like me and him were too serious too quick. Of course, she put a lot of energy into convincing him to end it with me. I'd like to point out at this stage that I was recovering from a pretty violent SA and going through chemo for ovarian cancer. 2 huge reasons as to why I wasn't ready for a relationship yet. She used them as reasons why I was pushing for a relationship and scared him into thinking I wanted something that I definitely didn't want. Thankfully, he ignored her advice and came and spoke to me, where I was able to clearly explain that I was not in the mindset for a serious relationship yet. Story 16. Not exactly a horrible situation, so maybe this doesn't count. But it was finals time, and I was studying my butt off for stat, which was that day, and Spanish, which was the next. I usually locked myself into the office and studied there. Well, I felt really antsy and had a strong gut feeling to go to campus. I lived 20 minutes away, which I normally wouldn't do because I had 3 hours till my stat test. Still, I decided to go and ended up studying in the cafeteria, took a break from studying statistics, and was working on Spanish. Suddenly, this dude I had never talked to, but was in my Spanish class, walked up to my table and asked if I'm ready for the test. We started talking about Spanish, and I learned that apparently the teacher decided to change the test date, and I hadn't read the email she sent about it. So the test was in like 30 minutes.